Welcome back, everyone. Hope everyone got some coffee. Again, I was not expecting the Americanos and chai lattes and everything in a conference center, so hope everyone got something good to drink. We're going to get into our panel now. Our topic for today is about the SaaSpocalypse, a term that I've done quite a bit of research on and learned a lot more about in the course of today. And we're going to get into how winning SaaS companies are transitioning to become AI native. So I'm joined by a really fantastic panel today. To kick us off, I think we'll go down and do some introductions. So if you can tell us about yourself and the type of products that you work on.
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Bir Khan. I spent over a decade building products at Google, Stripe, Notion, and now I lead product at Enterpret. AI is making building faster than ever, but PM leaders are now less confident about whether they're building the right things or not. But our customers are actually saying us what to fix, what to build, scattered across support tickets, sales conversation, social reviews, app store reviews, but it's scattered, buried in volume, and disconnected from our business context. So that's exactly the problem that Enterpret solves. Enterpret is a customer intelligence infrastructure that helps companies unify, understand, and act on the voices of their customers. As AI making building faster than ever, Enterpret is helping teams decide what's worthy of building. And I'm super excited to be here. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Birka.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aditya Gancham, co-founder and chief product officer at Conviva. We help companies deliver great digital, streaming, and agentic experiences and scale those experiences. We work with some of the largest B2C and B2B companies in the world today. And we're actually working on 3 different products that are all about helping companies go from their digital experiences to agentic experiences. Our platform is really good at understanding real user behavior from the data that we see. And we're using that data to help provide insights to the builder teams building the products, help simulate realistic users so we can test AI agents in the lab before they go live, and then also provide real-time user context to agents in real time to close the agentic learning loop. So our goal is to help everyone kind of go through this transformation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vijay. I'm a VP of Product for AI at ContentSquare. And we're a digital experience analytics platform that help you kind of get a 360 view of your digital experience, from what people are clicking on, what people are saying when they're ranting to your support team, and making sense of all of it. And actually, I lead our AI Accelerator, which is a set of teams that was built to really accelerate generative AI across our company and build a whole bunch of capabilities, including, coincidentally, our AI, which is called Sense. All right, that's what I'm.
Thanks, Vijay. Phil Badger from Lucid Software, Vice President of Corporate Strategy. That title is very meaningless to everybody, but at Lucid, it's meant a very specific thing. We've gone multi-product in the last 7 years, which means we started with a single product, Lucid Chart, and then over time added Lucid Spark, add-ons, security products, and then we acquired AirFocus for product management last year.
Wonderful. Well, you're all in this field. You've been here today hearing the different sessions. Let's start by talking about this idea of what some people are calling a SaaSpocalypse. What do you think of this idea? What is your hot take? And Phil, let's start with you.
Okay, hot take. I think the SaaSpocalypse as a forecast, as a prediction, is ludicrous. I think the SaaSpocalypse is dead. And here's what I mean by that. For sure, the world is shifting underneath our feet. The way we're working, the way our customers are working is changing so fast. But what's happening to SaaS? First, as a pricing model, people like to pay via subscriptions. Even if your software is interacting via agents, it's an easy, and this is really important, predictable way to pay. And so if it's affordable enough, people are still going to want subscriptions. The second piece is that new amazing things are now possible to be built with AI. And so I think it's actually giving new life to SaaS, because there are more new interesting problems that we can go solve for our core users, instead of trying to go out and compete for the existing kind of markets that we were already in.
All right, interesting. Yeah. BJ, what's your take?
Yeah, no, I think just to build on that, I think that I think the SaaSpocalypse is like maybe coming for some people, but definitely not coming for everyone. And I think that everyone should do the litmus test of like, instead of waiting for someone to tell you like, I could vibe code this, go try to vibe code this, right? And see what works and see what fails. I think you'll probably find that like some of the less sexy things like governance and compliance and security are actually pretty important and like part of the reason people will continue to buy your tool. But kind of building on what you were saying, Paul, like the fact that we can use this stuff too, right, like unlocks a lot more value. And I think that people's expectations are going to get a lot higher for speed to value and a lower total cost of ownership.
What do you think?
I think SaaSpocalypse, I think, is probably the wrong word. I think it's more, it's a revelation, it's a SaaS revelation of who has a really strong differentiated moats that they've built, whether it's technology or it's data. If they have a really strong moat, then I think they'll thrive in this new setting. But it also exposes the people who don't, who haven't built that moat, who've been kind of riding on having really good, usable, kind of sticky UI to power their growth. Those are going to be challenged. And so I think it's going to be different for different companies. But everyone who starts focusing on what is their true moat and also building on that moat at speed will be able to thrive in this setting.
Yeah, I'll just add on to my colleagues here. So I feel like we're going through a phase that's like going to an Italian restaurant, ordering a delicious pasta dish, paying $30, and you feel like, you know what, I could have cooked this at home. You go home, you try to cook something, but it's not as delicious. It takes 3 extra time. Then you have to clean up the kitchen, the dishes. Then you realize, like there's a secret craft here, right? The ingredients, the sauce, the timing, the ability to deliver the quality week over week, month over month. So I feel like that's exactly what we're going through with AI and the mindset of we can vibe code everything internally that is contributing to the SaaS apocalypse mentality. And don't get me wrong, like every SaaS company out there will need to reinvent ourselves because if your product is simply enabling basic workflows, now AI agents can operate across tools. So as Phil mentioned, your per seat pricing under pressure. If your product is not delivering any unique proprietary context, then it's very hard to defend. And if your product is not impacting the outcomes, then your customers will start thinking, why are we even paying for it? So now the question is, how are we going to reinvent ourselves? Our pricing model, our context layer, product surfaces, our claims to impact the outcomes. And I believe the durable SaaS companies will evolve from essentially selling seats to value, workflows to context, and features to outcomes. And the ones who are able to make this transition will emerge even stronger throughout this phase.
All right, well, you've hit on a number of themes that I want to unpack a bit further. Let's start with that idea of people saying, well, I can just vibe code this myself. Right now, a competitive threat can be an internal customer's own build. So what, for some of you, is the defense to that? What's your response?
Yeah, honestly, that's a great question, Rebecca. And I believe with AI, our customers are capable of building more themselves internally, and I don't see it as a bad thing. Internal builds are not the enemy. They're the new bar that every SaaS company out there needs to prove whether they're true infrastructure or they're like a thin wrapper that AI can rip and replace. But I would like to emphasize, differentiate the ability to build a prototype versus building an enterprise-grade system. If your prospects are willing to build a very narrow workflow, sure, they can vibe code it as a one-off thing. But if, like in our case, for example, if they're aiming to ingest customer feedback on a continuous basis, dedupe it, normalize it across sources, trying to connect it to their product roadmaps, revenue impact, churn risk, and update that context as their business grows, as their product lineup grows, good luck, because that's a different ballgame. And the pitch for us isn't about, oh, you can't build this internally. In fact, with enough resources, you can build everything. But the question is, do you really want to burn your resources, your AI talent, your AI tokens on reinventing the wheel, rebuilding the pipelines that carry your customer signals? Do not spend your resources on reinventing the wheel. Buy the infrastructure and build your core product differentiators, your internal workflows, your internal applications on top of that infrastructure. That's the pitch that has been resonating for us. And I also would like to emphasize one more thing. These type of internal builds, they rarely fail loudly. They fail very quietly. What I mean by that is the V1 version of the demo, oftentimes very good. But then over the time, like after first month, second month, one of the data sources gets stale, or the data starts looking mismatched, or the AI gives you different answers, who's asking, when you're asking, right? Like, so who's going to do the maintenance? Who's going to do the governance, the security? That is the hard part. Especially as business leaders, we start using these tools to make decisions. So trust becomes the value prop. And in the context of SaaS, building a trusted, governed, business context-aware infrastructure, that is the hard part, and that's where companies should consider building rather than trying to wipe code internally.
What about a few other voices in the mix? What do you guys think?
Well, when people say I'm going to vibe code this, I like to propose a thought experiment too. Pick your favorite app, okay, the one you use every day. Now, imagine that company said, I'm going to give you the source code to use this for free. You don't even have to vibe code it. They're just going to give it to you. Just imagine in your mind's eye, OK, what do you do next? Well, you're going to need someone to run it, to load it onto AWS, and to run it and maintain it. If you're going to be using it across your team with your important stuff, you're going to need someone to maintain the security and the software, or sorry, the security and compliance. And I can tell you from experience, even if the whole product's already built, it takes multiple people to do those jobs. And so you start to do the math on how many people it would take. It then looks like a very good deal to buy your $50,000 subscription for the year, because it really is that much cost. And if you do it by yourself, you're going to be dealing with all of the uptime issues, with the security issues, and it really becomes like a full-time job to do that, which most customers don't want to do.
Yeah, I think one thing also is like, looking at what are the technically difficult things that your platform actually does. So for example, we spend a lot, like we sell to like product managers and marketers, and so like we normally talk about ourselves as an analytics platform. We don't spend a lot of time talking about like the server endpoint that can be pounded with like billions of events, right, and not go down. We don't talk about the database layer and like the performance optimized queries. So not just you, but like thousands of other people can like instantly get your chart looking at like 20 different metrics at the same time over the last year, right? Like those are the things we just say, wow, we have really nice, pretty charts that load quickly, right? But underneath all of that is like a ton of work that I think would be very difficult for people to kind of vibe code on their own, and do so in a way especially that would create like high quality outputs that they could actually trust and replace like what we're doing with like over a long period of time. Now, all of that said, I think that not all layers of your product are created equal. So one thing that we've been reflecting a lot on is the fact that like, you know what, the chart itself kind of commoditized, right? Not the end of the world. That just means that we need to make our APIs really good, our MCP servers really good, and we need to make it really easy for you to choose whether you want to create that chart in our product or in like several other places. No worries, right? But all of the plumbing that made that possible is a lot of the core of what you're buying when you buy ContentSquare.
Almost that idea of like some of those good old enterprise attributes that have kind of always been important may now rise to the surface a bit more as the proverbial moat that we've heard about over and over today. Naditi, you were talking about the idea of kind of refounding the moat there. Any thoughts here?
Yeah, so I think for us, this is something we've always has been a big focus for us from the very beginning. And we actually ended up building our own data platform from scratch. We don't use any kind of off-the-shelf data warehouses, because the problems we're trying to solve needed proprietary technology. And so we see that as a very persistent moat even into the future. So we didn't really need to see the need to re-platform or find a new moat. We feel that that is actually a very strong moat. And that's what allows us to do all of the kind of analytics and intelligence that we can build on top of it. Now, vibe coding, all of this helps us go faster, but we feel that we have actually very powerful capabilities underneath that differentiate us even in this new age of people being able to vibe code new applications quickly.
And then, can you talk a bit about how this translates into like boardroom discussions where there's a desire for very forward-looking AI visionary advancement, but also then balancing that with some customers that just want very pragmatic solutions to their problems near term. Is that a balancing act that you're needing to strike? Are those conversations looking different from one another?
Yeah, I can talk about this.
No, go ahead.
So we see this. This is very real. We see this with everyone we talk to today. What we realized is that it's not just a challenge for us that we need to solve the problems of today. It's the challenge for our customers, because they all want to go to the agentic vision. And so the opportunity is really how to help them get there. So once we kind of realized this, we ended up rethinking what our product is doing for them. And essentially we laid out a path to help them go from today, which is they have their digital product, they want to improve it, so may help them do that, but the same platform helps them get to the agentic future. So we actually designed the product to focus on the agentic future, to provide real-time context and intelligence for what agents will need in the future, but then use the same insights to solve the problems of today, so that it's actually helps them actually solve their challenge of the journey to the agentic future. And that actually addresses our challenge of how do we help solve today's problems, but then build a foundation of future. So I mean, that will be different for everyone, but that's kind of how we connected the dots for ourselves and our customers.
And yeah, I think customers aren't or the individual users aren't necessarily skeptical that AI is going to change their business and help. It's more having the roadmap of how to get there. And so for us, we're leaning in really heavily to those initial steps to get the customer going. We're doing a lot more pro-serve so that we can work with them and kind of hold their hand and say, this is how you get from point A to point B. I think I don't know if this resonates with everyone else, but I walk around the showroom floor and I think, man, even if your software does what you say it does, I don't have time right now to deal with it and to adopt it and figure out how to put it in place. So I need your help to come in and hold my hand and make sure I can get to the final outcome.
And just show of hands, like how many people feel that way? Is that a reaction you're having when walking around the conference? Couple hands, okay. Maybe we need more coffee.
Maybe.
But certainly even your Italian meal metaphor about going home and making the incredible risotto, and can you really pull it off, and do you really want to pull it off? Totally makes sense. Did you have any thoughts there?
Yeah. So kind of to your question of you have the boardroom request for your big grand AI vision, right? So I've actually kind of lived this, right? Because they asked me to kind of own what that was going to be, and then also at the same time, they gave me a bunch of resources to deliver value on the ground. But we actually had to justify those resources before we could build and grow those teams. And the way we did that was we actually took a hard look, to your point, at pro services and a bunch of other places of where were we spending money and time to get people to value, keep them getting value, and eventually give them really clear ROI against that. And so then we said, okay, we're going to form teams that are kind of around that and build a bunch of things that in the near term were building blocks that led to a grander vision. So at the beginning, our board and our CEO and everyone was just I don't even want to use an analytics tool. I want an AI agent that just does everything for me, right? And this is also even pre-agents, right? So that was very hard at the time to think about doing. But we said, okay, let's start with chat. Let's start with summarizing different types of data that are in our platform. And all of that ultimately turned into tools and capabilities that when agents became easier and more feasible to build, we were able to kind of surf that wave, leverage all these tools that we built as building blocks, and now we have and are selling an AI agent that does a bunch of this analysis for you and lives up to that dream. But we didn't get there in one shot. We got there incrementally by building a lot of these building blocks and delivering a ton of value along the way.
And that ties into design and sort of how you're thinking about approaching design for this different world where you may be designing for agents versus humans. How has that changed? Tying off of that point, how have you been looking at that differently?
I'm happy to take that question because we lived it firsthand as well. So historically, when we were building products, we were building for humans navigating the screens. But in this agentic era, we have to design for humans and the agents. So practically what this means is that any action that a human being can take on your UI needs to be exposed programmatically to the agents as well, whether through APIs, MCP, CLI, and more, because your web application cannot be the only door to your product. At Enterpret, we launched our MCP server late last year, and now 1/3 of our users use our MCP, and 1/4 of our users only engage with our product through our MCP server. So this user behavior change towards a more conversation-first agentic engagement is happening, and it's happening very rapidly. So now this also needs to change what good designs look like. For humans, of course, like you look at a screen and you think, okay, is this intuitive enough? And for agents, now you need to think, is this capability discoverable? Is the data model clean? Do you have the right tool descriptions? Is this auditable? Is the agent is able to revoke this or trigger this action? You also need to think about those kind of things. And I think what's changing is, in the enterprise, in the software context, the UI is becoming the collaboration, the engagement layer, because human beings, they still need a surface to collaborate, to broadcast. And at the same time, your APIs, your MCPs are becoming the action layer for your agents. And then you need a context layer underneath it all to act as the shared truth. And when you tie all of it together, now you have that strong context layer that is powering up multiple surfaces to your product. At Enterpret, for example, our web UI, our Slack bot, MCP server, all of them is operating under the same shared unified understanding, delivering consistency to our users. In my opinion, as we are designing for the agents, this doesn't mean that it will kill the UI. It's just that we need to make the product contract very explicit. For agents, we need to provide them the tools, the right API descriptions, the programmatic access. For humans, we need to give them the evidence, the collaboration surface, the broadcasting surface. And for the admins, we need to give them the governance, the control plane. And I believe software companies who are able to natively talk to the humans and agents at the same time will thrive in this new agentic world.
This point about context and context layers has come up a lot in our conversations. I know, Aditya, you were just talking about that in the green room, right? From a data perspective.
Yeah, actually, context is a really interesting topic. I think in a lot of cases, we're thinking, okay, what context do I have that I should prepare for the agent? But what we realize is the most important context for agents actually doesn't sit in our documentation site or in our databases. That's actually not it. The most important context right now is sitting in our minds, in the minds of people who are using the products today. So so the path we're taking actually is not to take the docs that exist, but actually find ways to discover the context that's really needed for agents. So if we think about like an e-commerce site, then the context agents really need is, what are the buying habits of the people coming to that site? How do they make decisions? What are the intents that they have? What are their preferences? And so how do we extract? That's not actually sitting in any of the databases of that e-commerce site. So we have to mine those patterns in how the users are actually interacting on the site and use that data to prepare the context. And we ran into the same thing for our own agent. We have a analytics agent within our product. And so we can feed it all our documentation and the metric definitions. But really what the agent needs is not just that. It needs, what kind of questions are people really asking? What problems are they trying to solve? And for that, again, we need to mine the data of actual user behavior to feed it the context. So I think the main thing about context is the data mostly isn't sitting anywhere. We have to actually mine that data in real time as people are interacting with these products and then prepare that as context.
Wonderful. Well, I'm actually a little bit shocked by the clock because we have a minute and a half left. So I think we had questions yet to go, but let's do this. Let's go down the panel. Maybe Phil will come this way again. And what key thought on this topic of AI native, of the SaaSpocalypse that we don't believe is actually that or the right term at all, what's the thought that you want to leave everybody with?
Yeah, I think you have to rethink how you structure your teams and really think about the administrative load that we've added over the years. We're experimenting with some teams to pull them out of normal roadmap commitments and just the weekly onslaught of meetings. If you're interested in how we're doing it, come stop by our booth. But it's cool, and it's helping them prototype more quickly, work closer with customers, and move a little bit more quickly than the rest of us who are bogged down in those meetings.
Team structure. Okay. How about you?
Yeah, I think the big thing is your product is not zero sum. Think about your product and your moats in layers and try to identify what is more robust versus less robust. You may find that you either need to pivot or you need to, kind of to your point, change where you're investing, right, within your platform. What you thought might be important to invest in may not be where you have more of a moat, and you may want to shift things around a little bit.
I think many of the speakers earlier today, I think, talked about this, is moving to the builder pods. I think that should be, if you haven't done it already, I think that should be the #1 priority for everyone, to where every single role, whether it's product, design, engineering, is contributing directly to what's going out to production. Everyone is iterating on the same set of artifacts, It's not the world of every role has their own artifact that they're handing off. Everyone is actually contributing to the same artifacts through AI and building on what each other's doing. I think moving to that builder pod is the #1 priority. Should be everybody's #1 priority if you're not there yet.
Yeah.
So I would leave you with this, like, is AI making building faster? Your competitors are also moving faster. The market is moving faster. I believe the highest leverage question that product leaders can ask to themselves is no longer, can we build it? It's, should we build it? And the ability to answer that question really depends on how well you understand your customers. And that's why I fundamentally believe that customer intelligence is going to be the next critical infrastructure in this AI day and age. And if you feel this pain that we talked about already, if you're struggling to have that context layer that helps you understand what your customers are asking, where they're struggling, what's the business impact, what's the next best action we should take to move the outcomes, please find us at our booth. I would love to continue the conversation.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for what actually was a very uplifting conversation. And it summed it up for me today. I saw a slide upstairs that showed cavemen, and it was marked how products were built in 2024. And to think that that's the caveman era and this pace of change that we're living in, really appreciate everything you've shared. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.